Boleslaw Bierut. We are building the structure of Socialist Poland. Closing speech delivered by Boleslaw Bierut at the 5th plenary session of the Central Committee of the Polish United Workers' Party on the 16th of July, 1950. Comrades, the two-day session of the 5th plenum of the Central Committee devoted to the 6-year plan and the preparation of cadres indispensable for the realization of this plan have terminated a long stage of preparatory work begun, as we know, still before the Unification Congress, that is, over 2 years ago. The 6-year plan emerges from the deliberations of the present plenum already as a ready plan, that is, an elaborated verified plan, and completely prepared for 1. Its submission in the form of a draft law to the proper organs of state, 2. Taking it to all the party organizations as a program of action expressed in plain figures but pulsating with a mighty and revolutionary social content, 3. Acquainting with it the entire nation and every citizen, every worker and peasant, engineer and teacher, for acquainting with it all the working people or those preparing for work by studying. It is a plan and the direction of our road of development for the period of the coming 6 years, but it is a plan and direction that determines our entire future. It would be a mistake to perceive in the 6-year plan only dry, though bold figures, only figures and quantitative indices, which perhaps astound by their size and comparable expressiveness, but which are expressed only in simple sums in numerical elaboration, in a summing up. In one word, to perceive in the 6-year plan only its quantitative, external side, and fail to realize its qualitative, revolutionary content which will transform our social relations in the core. The 6-year plan is not only an economic program, but at the same time an ideological, political program affecting the entire social order. The 6-year plan is a plan which will create the strong and invincible foundations of a new social order in Poland, the foundations of socialism. In this sense, the 6-year plan is a concrete form of the realization of the ideology of our party in a definite segment of time. It is the direction line of our party's policy, imbued with definite tasks, a guidepost and a directive for our activities. Our ideology, our program, our policy, our propaganda, our organizational activity never have had anything in common with fantasy, with utopia, with petty bourgeois phrases divorced from life. On the contrary, we have fought most categorically against, and continue to fight against, empty, common, pompous, and hypocritical words devoid of concrete content, which the bourgeoisie and its social democratic, Titoist, etc., lackeys use so willingly in order to disguise, often the most perfidious, imperialist deceit and plots. The concreteness of our ideology, our program, and our policy is expressed at the present stage precisely by the 6-year plan. It is a clear and distinct program, as distinct as the language of figures in which this program has been presented, outlined, and elaborated. What does this program consist of? What does it express, and what does it state? It states that the socialist order cannot be introduced without a thorough transformation of the country's economy, without basing this economy on an incomparably higher technical level. What was the level of our economy, of our national economy, in the pre-war period, and what is it to a considerable degree still today, in spite of the immense changes which have taken place in our country during the past 5 years? It is a relatively low level, much below, both materially and technically, in comparison with highly industrialized countries. It is still a level of relatively low labor productivity of industrial workers, and a level of a small scale, often dwarf-like individual peasant economy, which still prevails in our agriculture. We have advanced forward already considerably in comparison with the state which we inherited from the bourgeois order of pre-war Poland. Our industrial production is at present 2.5 times greater on a per capita basis than before the war. Such a leap in industrial production was possible only due to an important raising of the level of our productive forces during the past 5 years, both in industry and agriculture. But we have undertaken only the first step in the direction of transforming our backward economy. We have taken the first important forward stride, which makes possible for us a further true and rapid march forward in the direction of attaining a new, still higher technical level corresponding to the requirements of a new socialist social order. We can attain at present that of which Lenin spoke figuratively when putting before the party the task of creating a large machine industry, that is, quote, to change horses, to change from the peasant, muzhick horse of poverty to the horse which the proletariat is seeking and cannot but seek, the horse of large-scale machine industry, of electrification, of Volksaufstreu, etc. End of quote. Lenin, Better Fewer but Better. Selected Works. English edition. Moscow, 1947. Volume 2. Page 855. To change to a horse of higher technique, to new and complex machines of our own production, to the Nova Huta in industry, to electrification, to automobiles of domestic production in transport, to tractors in agriculture. Only then will it be possible to build enduring and unshakable foundations of socialism in Poland. It is only higher technique which makes possible a higher labor productivity and creates the conditions for a marked growth in the prosperity and culture of the entire nation, in the prosperity and culture of the working masses, without which there is no socialism. Socialism signifies, Comrade Stalin stated at the 17th Congress, quote, the organization of prosperous and cultural life for all the members of society, end of quote. The present level of the labor productivity of the Polish worker and peasant, limited by the still relatively low level of technique, and, let us add in passing, by the still not sufficiently efficient organization of work culture of labor and skill available, does not assure such a level of life of the working masses as we would consider satisfactory. We want to raise the material and cultural level of the life of the working masses much higher, and we shall succeed in accomplishing this. We have already all the conditions for setting ourselves such a task, and for its fulfillment in a relatively short time. The 6-year plan puts forth such a task. Socialism, Comrade Stalin stated, can only be built up on the basis of a rapid growth of the productive forces of society, on the basis of the abundance of products and goods, on the basis of the prosperity of the working people, and on the basis of the rapid growth of culture. End of quote. Stalin, Problems of Leninism, Moscow, 1947, English edition, pages 505 to 506. The essential content of our 6-year plan is a mighty raising of the level of productive forces, unheard of in the past history of the economic development of our country, based on the most modern and high technique. This pertains both to industry and agriculture. It pertains to all the fields of our national economy. As a result of the achievements of the 6-year plan, Poland will be transformed into one of the most industrialized countries of Europe. It is unnecessary to prove the significance that the 6-year plan will have for Poland's defensive power, for its economic, political and state independence. The industrialization of the country on the basis of socialist economic and political forms signifies a thorough elimination of all capitalist influences in various fields of our life. It signifies simultaneously an intensification of Poland's contribution to the general forces of the camp of peace, which opposes the policy of conquest and economic slavery, as well as of military aggression of imperialism, its policy of rapine and war. In this respect, the 6-year plan possesses not only a domestic but also an international significance. Comrade Mink spoke of this in the final part of his report. However,
In the discussion, the economic accents of the deliberations dominated somewhat over the political content of the tasks of the 6-year plan. Of course, one cannot separate the political content of the tasks inherent in the 6-year plan from its economic content. The essence lies in their interconnection, in the dialectical unity of economics and politics in our development towards socialism. We cannot forget for a moment this unity and this connection of economic tasks with political tasks in our struggle for the realization of the 6-year plan. The working masses of Poland who are putting into effect the 6-year plan by their devoted effort must be aware of the fact that their effort is an expression of participation in a class struggle, in a life and death struggle between the declining forces of capitalism and the new, constantly growing forces which the proletariat has aroused and which socialism has inspired with a mighty, transfiguring and invincible idea. The most important task of our party is to make the working masses aware of the fact that their everyday, toilsome labor, requiring an exertion of forces in the class struggle, in the fight against exploitation and barbarism, against the rapine and tyranny of imperialism, a struggle for a new, better world, a new, free and creative life for man. Only when the working masses will feel themselves to be soldiers on the front of the class struggle, which is being waged with increasing determination both within our country and outside of it, only then will we successfully fulfill and surpass the great and responsible tasks of the 6-year plan. It would be dangerous and even criminal in relation to these tasks to exercise a narrow, limited practical attitude, incapable of perceiving living people behind the dry figures, as well as separating oneself from burning, everyday concerns and production processes. Both these dangers are characteristic today, unfortunately, of the work of many of our organizational elements, both party as well as professional, administrative and state. This explains the fact that we have been unable to utilize fully the immense reserves of people as well as material, social and economic reserves which are at our disposal. During the discussion, comrades have dealt at length with the problem of the failure to utilize and set into motion immense reserves of forces, of means, due to faulty organization of work, careless or bureaucratic attitude towards set tasks. It is impossible to eradicate effectively this morass of soullessness, carelessness, or simply criminal attitude of some individuals towards tasks of production, towards labor discipline, towards social property, if we do not incessantly mobilize the vigilance of the masses, if we do not activize for the struggle for the production plan the entire working class as well as every individual member of it. As long as masked agents of enemy classes are active among the working masses, and in many important elements of our economic and state apparatus, the mobilization of political vigilance is an indispensable condition for paralyzing the perfidious attempts of the enemy. As long as the influence of reaction reaches the backward elements of the working population, political activeness aimed at opposing these influences should not weaken but increase. As long as small commodity economy, which every day breeds capitalism, exists in society, as long as strata exist, which practice capitalist exploitation, stimulate capitalist greed and the readiness to serve the interests of imperialism, so long must revolutionary vigilance and the class struggle permeate our every step, our entire work. Otherwise, defeat awaits us, for every weakening of our vigilance and political activeness automatically emboldens and strengthens the activity of the class enemy, arouses and animates the diversive and underhand activity of reaction. The tasks of the 6-year plan are connected with immense shifts in the composition of social relations in the country. Over 2 million new workers will come from the village and other heretofore unutilized sources of manpower reserves to various fields of the economy during the 6-year period. But we must remember that what matters is not only to increase numerically the ranks of the proletarian army accomplishing production plans. What matters is that it be an army of conscious, devoted fighters of the proletariat, determined to struggle for socialism, creating in a conscious and idealist way, that is, with the highest selflessness and devotion, a new, higher and better social order. Thus, the masses of youth, women, working peasants, village and urban poor, drawn into production work, must be kindled by us with the fire of the great socialist idea, which is capable of animating every man with a creative drive. We shall not be able to achieve this if we do not reshape our heretofore style of our organizational work, which still too often is far behind the tasks put forth by the party. We must put an end to the still so common superficiality of methods of organizational work in many of our links. One cannot be satisfied only, as generally happens, with the passing of correct decisions, without a further care for their precise fulfillment, their actual realization. Some people think, Comrade Stalin stated at the 17th Congress, quote, that it is sufficient to draw up correct party line, proclaim it from the housetops, state it in the form of general theses and resolutions, and take a vote, and carry it unanimously for victory to come of itself, spontaneously as it were. This, of course, is wrong. It is a gross delusion. Only incorrigible bureaucrats and red tapists can think so. End of quote. Stalin, Problems of Leninism, page 509. Comrade Mink, in his report, stated that we must, quote, raise the level of our organizational work to the level of our political line, end of quote. This is extremely important, and we must be clearly aware of what this signifies in the practice of our organizational work. If the six-year plan in its great productive and social tasks reflects the political line of our party, then the raising of the level of the organizational work to these tasks lies in the fact that every party member should not only himself understand these tasks, but should be able to influence his social environment, his non-party co-workers, and draw them in the work of realizing this task in the sector where he is present, or which he can activize, arouse, and mobilize. Comrades have correctly pointed out in the discussion that if a production plan assigned to a particular work establishment is to be successfully fulfilled, it must be brought not only to the entire crew, but also to every section, to every production group, and finally to every worker. When every worker of the factory crew knows the planned tasks, understands them and consciously participates in their fulfillment, he will show care for the opposing of all wastefulness, for the utilizing in full of existing reserves, for assuring maximum labor productivity, both his own and of the entire crew. The entire success of the issue depends most often on such a style of organizational work. Comrade Stalin during the 17th Congress of the party pointed this out. He taught that, quote, victory never comes by itself, it usually has to be attained, unquote. Ibid, page 509. It is attained by proper organizational work. Here's what Comrade Stalin stated on this subject. Quote, after the correct line has been laid down, after a correct solution of the problem has been found, success depends on how the work is organized, on the organization of the struggle for the application of the party line, on the proper selection of personnel, on the way a check is kept on the fulfillment of the decisions of the leading bodies. Otherwise, the correct line of party and the correct solutions are in danger of being seriously prejudiced. Furthermore, after the correct political line has been laid down, organizational work decides everything, including the fate of the political line itself, its success or failure, unquote. Ibid, page 509. Thus, good organizational work determines victory. Good organizational work lies in activizing and utilizing all the organizational elements. In organizational work, many of our party committees have developed such a style that the active members, the leading cadres, are usually set into action without any further concern for the rank-and-file members of the party. And further, the manner in which the leading cadres carry out the decisions of the leadership is not even verified. It happens often that the active members from whom no reports are required and whose activity is not controlled approach their tasks equally superficially and do not penetrate deeper into the party ranks, do not set definite tasks for particular party members, do not activize them, do not teach rank-and-file party members how to work with non-party people. This is why we have so many party members showing little activity or even completely passive. This is why, in carrying out even our most important tasks, we utilize only a part of our forces and influences. Will it be possible, continuing to employ this style of work, to fulfill successfully the great tasks of the 6-year plan? No, we will not be able to carry them out satisfactorily. The 6-year plan has considerably extended our heretofore tasks. The rate of production increase, and thus the sums of means and forces which we must set into motion in order to assure this rate, are much higher than heretofore. The mobilization of all forces for these high production tasks is necessary. On the other hand, we cannot permit ourselves to decrease the rate, to lower the tasks, for we cannot permit ourselves to lag behind as regards the technical level of our industry and as regards the level of our productive forces. It is not permissible for us to remain backward because the working masses desire to live differently, better, and more culturally than they have lived in the past. We cannot permit ourselves to build the foundations of socialism during decades, because any delays would only present trump cards to our class enemies. Finally, we must assure the rapid rate of growth of our productive forces and of the level of technique, because the international situation requires this, as does the concern for our independence, the concern for the defense power of our state, and the concern for the growth of the forces of the camp of peace in the struggle with imperialist aggressiveness. Therefore, in undertaking the great but splendid and inspiring tasks of the 6-year plan, we must mobilize and activize in the struggle for the plan's fulfillment the entire working class, the entire working people of town and country. The working masses will support our efforts with enthusiasm, zeal, and the highest devotion if we show them the social, revolutionary essence of the tasks of the 6-year plan. There has never been, and there is, no more beautiful, splendid, more creative and inspiring aspiration in the history of man than the idea of the complete liberation of man from all oppression and slavery. This idea is socialism. Our 6-year plan is the realization of this idea. It is the building of the foundations of socialism in Poland. We know the hard laws of the class struggle, and thus we know that the enemy will reply to our 6-year plan with still more furious hatred, with still more perfidious struggle, with still more underhand and poisoned weapons. But our forces are growing every day. The lies and slanders spread by the enemy, the attempts to prey on ignorance and fanaticism, will not be able to resist the offensive of truth, which is carried out by our party. A truth realized every day, in work and in deed, embodied in millions of cemented bricks, of millions of tons of extracted coal, of millions of printed books. Thus, defending peace adamantly and unrelentingly, we shall consolidate the entire nation in the defense of peace, sustain the wavering, unmask the hypocrites, verify in everyday practice the verbal peace and patriotic declarations. In a few days, we shall be celebrating the 6th anniversary of the formation of the Polish Committee of National Liberation, the birth of People's Poland, which arose due to the historic victory of the USSR. On this anniversary, let us carry forward to the working masses the slogans of the 6-year plan. Let us make the masses aware of the tasks of the plan. The people's power has proved in the 6 years since its formation that it was able to defend and put into effect the liberation slogans of the Polish Committee of National Liberation. It has never betrayed the hopes of the working people. During the past period, the people's power had to carry out difficult and great tasks. It fulfilled these successfully with the support of the work and devotion of the working people. During the past period, the working masses fulfilled victoriously and ahead of schedule the bold and difficult 3-year plan. In the light of these experiences, who can doubt that we shall also realize victoriously the 6-year plan? However, a prerequisite for our victory is that every working man in Poland become a conscious creator of the 6-year plan. It is necessary that everyone, beginning with the school child, know the plan and the program of building socialism. That every working man become devoted to the cause of building socialism, a fighter and selfless fulfiller of the 6-year plan. Let us glance backwards. How many human beings, how many talents and gifts have been suppressed and wasted by the accursed capitalist system? How much suffering it has caused us, how it submerged into darkness and destroyed the souls of millions of people. How many of the best people, how many revolutionaries, how many Polish communists,
gave their lives in the unequal struggle against the capitalist force. How many noble strivings burned out in sterile flounderings, and still more often in impotent cravings which broke down under the weight of ruthless oppression and cruelty of the capitalist system. Today, we are approving the 6-year plan, which surpasses 1,000-fold in its scope and creative momentum the timid dreams of quote-unquote crystal houses. Today, we are building the bright, happy edifice of Socialist Poland, based on the granite-like foundations of people's patriotism and proletarian internationalism, on the unshakable foundations of solidarity and the brotherhood with the great Soviet Union. Putting into effect our 6-year plan and building the foundations of Socialist Poland, we are carrying out the testament and realizing the dreams of entire generations of Polish revolutionaries, of Polish fighters for freedom and social justice, the best sons of the Polish nation, who died on the slopes of the citadel, on the barricades of Polish towns, in struggling against Polish fascism, in the fight against the Nazi invader, and in encounters with the fascist underground and imperialist agents. Today, in accepting the project of the 6-year plan at the plenum of the Central Committee of our party, we pay homage to the memory of all those who laid down their lives for Socialist Poland. I wish you, comrades, successful work in the popularization and the carrying over to the broad masses the mighty tasks of the 6-year plan, in the mobilization of the working masses for the fulfillment of the plan. Let us then boldly carry the slogans and tasks of the 6-year plan throughout the entirety of our country. Let us call to the ranks of those realizing the 6-year plan all the fighters and patriots, everyone who loves our country, who is faithful to the cause of the proletariat, who understands and sees the superiority of our order over the decayed and rapacious capitalist order. In building socialism in Poland, we stand together with the great legion of builders of socialism and fighters for socialism, which grows today in all the countries of the world. Our leader and guide is Stalin, and thus our idea and our ranks are invincible. Faithful to the ideas of Marx, Engels, Lenin, and Stalin, we shall spare no effort for the fulfillment of the 6-year plan, our contribution to the cause of the defense of peace and the full victory of socialism.